Good morning and welcome to day one of the Bloomberg Green Summit. I'm Ed Ludlow, an editor and on-air reporter at Bloomberg Television. I also report and write about the automotive industry for Bloomberg News. And I'm delighted to be joined by Zoox CEO Aicha Evans. Aicha has been in the role since February 2019. Before that, she was a senior vice president and chief strategy officer at Intel, where she really helped Intel move from a PC-centric to data-driven business model. Aicha, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Looking forward to the session.
So a good place to start for the audience. What is Zoox?
Zoox is transforming mobility on demand or mobility as a service. And this is really about making personal transportation cleaner, safer, and more enjoyable for everyone.
It feels like we've been talking about the idea of autonomy, robotaxis for years and years now. So set the scene for us. Where are we in the United States with the autonomous technology industry?
We have several companies working in this space. We use essentially, this is a robo-taxi. So imagine it as a vehicle that is purpose-built. It is designed and architected for essentially AI to drive. So we really optimize it around riders. From our viewpoint, once we launch, the customer won't even think about driving. They will be transported from point A to point B. They have an app. They say, I want to go from here to there. We come, pick them up, sliding doors open, they step in, buckle up, start, and off they go. And we think that this is one of the best applications for essentially AI and autonomy in general.
This is the Bloomberg Green Summit, a focus on climate and sustainability. I guess, what is the rationale and utility of a robo-taxi fleet? How does it help us reduce emissions? How does it allow for more sustainable mobility in the future?
Well, in our case, and again, we've been super consistent from the beginning. We haven't deviated in any way, shape, or form since inception in 2014. We're actually built around sustainability. I think we'll all agree that folks and customers will move around cities, whether it's for productivity, whether it's for entertainment, whether it's for whatever rocks their boat, and they will move from point A to point B in cities. And the fact that we're all electric, the fact that we're also around ride sharing. And I know the pandemic, I want to be very respectful because there's a pandemic right now. A customer can ride alone or with somebody else. And the fact that it is super, super, super efficient, because when I'm not using it or when you're not using it, somebody else is using it. So it's constantly moving around cities, taking people from point A to point B. So it is built around sustainability.
We have a lot of ground to cover throughout this session this morning, but one of the biggest events of your tenure as CEO is Amazon, of course. Amazon acquired Zoox in June last year. Talk us through that. How did that come about?
Well, we had been talking to them for a while, and we're super proud, frankly privileged that they chose us for their autonomy play. It's been a fantastic experience in the sense that we've been part of Amazon since August or so, and same mission, exactly everything we've been up to. Don't have to be fundraising, so super focused on execution and getting to market and learning a lot from them. This is not just about capital. They've done a great job as a company, building great businesses that are both orthogonal and adjacent, and now we're one of those, and it's been a great experience. And if you're working at Zoox on a day-to-day basis, frankly, you don't really even know because we're just very focused, and we're testing right now, very focused on the safety case and being able to scale that in a qualitative and in a quantitative manner, and then getting to market.
Of course, you can't get away from Amazon being a giant of e-commerce. You know, I've had the privilege of sitting in your shuttle. I know that your immediate target is a robo-taxi fleet to move consumers from A to B. But could Zoox also be involved in autonomous delivery? There seems to be just as much momentum around autonomous shipping as there is in moving passengers.
So eventually, maybe what we say internally that we hope to earn this opportunity. people movement, especially when it comes to sustainability and really just customer experience, especially in cities. We're going to make cities less congested, more sustainable, and frankly, just more enjoyable. We don't want you to worry about driving. So that's what we're focused on. We think that, yes, we're intrigued. A lot of companies have changing business models every few years or so. That's not our case. It's about the people mover. It's a great business too. I'm going to be upfront. And then from there, because of the technological foundation it's based upon, meaning a vehicle that is architected and designed from the ground up for autonomy using AI, obviously we'll concede that if we can move people, we can move packages and goods and services. But first, let's get to market. There's been too much variation and too many changes in this industry. We've been, we think, the most consistent company, and we're just going to stay on course, get to market. And we know that once we do, we will earn the opportunity from many adjacencies.
Well, let's pick up on that. There's also been a lot of consolidation in the industry. There are still a large number of AV or self-driving startups out there, but we have seen deals, we have seen mergers. What's your take on that? Do you think that we will see further consolidation? Is it just simply capital that's the limiting factor? Why are we seeing all of this consolidation right now?
Yeah, I would say it's fair to say there's been a fair amount of consolidation. Look, I mean, this is a hard, complex problem. It's probably a generational, one of the hardest one from a generational standpoint. It's one that is worthy, so it's normal that many would pursue it. It's capital intensive. Also from a talent standpoint and from just being able to kind of find all of the talent, keep it and align your forces. And so when you're also raising capital, you probably have to make concessions that, in terms of what the investor or the strategic investor wants. So I think it's normal we're seeing this. How we're looking at this is Zoox worries about itself and focuses on execution and building a company the right way, meaning being really understanding that eventually this is a big business and you don't wait until you've solved the technology to build the company. You do that along the way. So that's what we're focused on. Now, at the end of the day, because it's a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity, we think that there will be several players. I don't want to be too facetious, but let's say it won't be many, but it will be a few. That's just the way capital markets work, the invisible hand of Adam Smith. And so we will have fellow travelers along the way who will also be competitors, and that's okay.
As I said, Aicha, I've had the benefit of going behind the scenes with you and seeing the Zoox vehicle, but there's a great question from the audience, which is, what is Zoox doing to accommodate passengers with disabilities such as blindness, deafness, or other mobility issues?
Oh, great question. Thank you for asking that. We're in the middle of, first of all, talking to those communities, understanding. I think many times us engineers kind of solve a solution for somebody without asking them what it is that would work for them. So we're in the middle of figuring that out. And it's a broad community with differing needs. It's important to serve. And so we have a lot of concepts and conversations about how we're going to introduce that. I mean, right now it's important. This is our first prototype product. We're going to take it to market because solving the technology is really, really important. And as we're getting this information and looking at all of the different modifications in the future, we're taking the input into account and coming with solutions that will work for everyone.
There's a lot of excitement, optimism, particularly from Wall Street and the investor community, about President Biden, his administration, the infrastructure bill, and what that could mean for electric vehicles in particular. A lot of that seems focused on consumer or passenger cars. But do you see any specific momentum or boost coming from the Biden administration, specifically with regards to autonomous technology?
So first of all, we are encouraged to see the administration focus on sustainability. We think that's really important for decades to come and generations to come. So we embrace that and we welcome that. There's actually a lot going on in terms of autonomy. We are in constant contact with federal, state, and local authorities, both from a regulatory standpoint, from how do we basically merge into the existing existing footprint and environment. And I'm really, really encouraged because everybody sees what's going on in cities. They are congested. It's not like there's a lot of real estate footprint that you can just go, okay, I'm going to get rid of this and put more roads or what have you. And we also see the impact, frankly, on the real estate footprint in terms of parking. So so far, we've been very encouraged. Great conversations. I personally talked to a lot of people. So does my co-founder, Jesse Levinson. And then our Chief Safety Innovation Officer, Mark Roskine, and his team are in constant communication, and we're influencing things, and they're also telling us what is important to them, and we're incorporating that into the product.
Zoox's product, the vehicle, is all electric. You know, it's your own design, but we're getting a lot of questions from the audience about charging infrastructure and how that plays into the rollout of not just electric vehicles, robo-taxis as well. Who has the bigger role here, the private sector or the government in building out the infrastructure needed to support this ecosystem of modern mobility?
You know, every time the United States has done great transformative things, there's been a partnership between government and the private sector. This is no different. Obviously, you need a partnership with authorities and the government and also utility companies, because you can't charge with power that you don't have, and that affects the grid and the real estate. And you need the private sector, obviously, because this is all, at the end of the day, to serve a business. And so those conversations are going on. And in terms of where the geofences that we will serve, we obviously are working with the authorities and the different companies to pull power and make sure we do that in a way that is very communal with the infrastructure we're coming into.
You touched on this, you know, in the conversations that you've been having, but talk to me about regulation. What is the biggest barrier right now to deployment? I guess the question I get every single week is, when am I actually going to see a robo-taxi in the real world, and why am I not seeing it today?
All right. Well, you're not seeing it today because we're not quite ready to do that. The safety bar is really high, especially in Zoox's case. And again, we do not believe that retrofitting cars, meaning taking current passenger cars and slapping sensors and compute, is the way to get to market at scale and in a way where you meet the safety bar. So in the case of Zoox, we are obviously, you've seen the videos. We have the vehicle ready. This is not a concept car; it's built, and now we're working on the qualitative and quantitative safety case, since we're going to be driving amongst other humans. Now, in terms of regulatory, it's been great. I mean, obviously, we are in contact with the regulatory authorities. We believe that it is, I mean, this comes down to safety again, both safety in terms of what happens in the street and crashes and so on. We know how many Americans lose their lives because of crashes. So again, it's a partnership. We don't see any things blocking us on our path forward. But as an industry, we also need to take that very, very, very seriously into consideration, because again, we have to be communal and safe in the environment that exists today amongst human drivers.
So let's talk a little bit about Zoox's business model. You've given me a behind-the-scenes tour of your top-secret manufacturing facility here in the Bay Area, but I think a lot of people don't appreciate you're actually building the vehicles yourselves. So talk to me a little bit about that, and then explain to us a sort of normal 24-hour operating day for Zoox when you do actually deploy your service.
Okay. Yes, we have a manufacturing facility in the Bay. And it's, as you saw, it's live. I think your reaction was, "Oh my gosh, this is real," and we're like, "Yeah, it is." We just don't open it up to the public. But I want to be clear. What we do there is we actually we assemble the vehicle. We work with a global tier 1 supply chain, and by the way, we make sure also that they have a sustainability roadmap, because sustainability is not just about what you do, but it's about who you partner with and the entire value chain, and is everybody doing the right thing. And so there are about, I don't know, a little bit, maybe somewhere between 10 and 20 big subsystems. Think like a drive unit with steering, braking, and so HVAC and so on. You have your wheels, you have the body, you have the seating tub, and so on. And so all of those pieces are, we design and architect them, and we work very closely with the global supply chain. Then they deliver those to us, already tested. Then we assemble the vehicle at our facility, and then we basically pass factory gate, bring it up, and go to testing. And so this is how this works. And by the way, we're also proud that this is in the United States, and we're hiring a lot of people, around 450 folks in both engineering and manufacturing. And we believe that this is the right approach. And now going forward, we get a lot the question, are you going to do this forever? First of all, back to the business model. When you're talking about a robotaxi, volumes are very low by definition, because essentially a day in the life of the vehicle. So in the morning, service, charging, make sure it's ready to go, and all systems are a go, and then it goes to the geofence where it's serving people. Passengers are saying through the app, I want to go from point A to point B. Closest vehicle shows up, picks up the passenger, drops them off. Before the passenger is even dropped off, next customer is ready, so it goes and picks up. So think about it as sort of a heterogeneous merry-go-round that is constantly picking up, dropping off, picking up, dropping off, and then until it goes back to base. Now, it can go back to base for service because something happened, or it can go back to base at the end of its shift, and here we go again, charging, service, redeploy.
Which cities do you want to roll this out in first?
We've been public about the fact that Las Vegas is a target city. We affectionately call the strip a one-street dense urban environment. And so that's our first target market. We think that's a very sensible thing to do. And then San Francisco. Obviously, that's also our home state, and this is where we're currently testing our L3. And then we haven't made any announcement beyond that, but obviously we would like to be in all of the major cities in the United States. And yes, why not eventually go global?
You touched on supply chain, about the need to have sustainability in your suppliers as well. We've got a great audience question from Gina in Houston, who's talking about battery metals, in particular nickel. You know, there's a lot of competition out there for batteries right now, not just the packs, but cell supply. How difficult was it for Zoox to set up a supply chain from scratch for your purpose-built electric vehicle, particularly on the battery side?
I mean, it was challenging. You're a young startup, right? And we know what's happened sometimes in the past, but we've been and I'll take this opportunity to thank our global supply chain, by the way. Folks see that, wow, this is different. This is the beginning of something special. Again, it makes sense from a first principle standpoint. If you want to deploy at scale and you want to be safe, and this vehicle has no manual control, it is really built for riders, it makes sense to partner with people who are doing this already. Again, this is optimized for AI to drive and not the other way around. So the supply chain has seen us as an innovative company that is very serious, that doesn't deviate from its mission or its business model. I mean, we've said the same thing since 2014, and that's what we've been executing to. Now, obviously, you have your normal competing on cost and price and so on, and also on what will happen to these batteries on the other side in terms of recycling. But I'm not going to say it's been easy, but it's been a pleasant, very productive set of partnerships. And we hope we go all the way to launch together and then beyond.
I want to move on to the topic of diversity, but first, we did have a very good question from the audience, which I think a lot of people struggle to understand where startups like Zoox fit into the real world in the next few years. Is it the case that Zoox sells itself as a service to a municipality or a city, that you just exist within a very specific infrastructure in conjunction with the city, with local authorities? Or is it that Zoox is much bigger than that, like an Uber or a Lyft, where you operate outside of local infrastructure?
So our plan at this point in time, we think that if AV is requiring local municipalities and cities to do something different, we've failed. And so our plan is to exist within the current infrastructure. And that's what we're testing for, and that's what we're going to market with. And this is important. We are not in the business of selling a vehicle to anybody. The fleet belongs to us. And what we sell you is a ride in the form of a service. And we believe that this is the way to have the most efficient, most effective, sustainable, essentially, product, and driven by autonomy, but really optimized for riders.
let's talk about diversity. There are not many female CEOs in Silicon Valley, full stop, let alone in the autonomous technology space. You know, after Waymo's recent announcement, I think I'm right in saying you're one of just two with the title of CEO. Why is diversity important when you're designing a product like yours, and what can be done to improve it?
So look, we're in the consumer business. Our consumers come from all walks of life. For me, or for us, diversity is not just about race or gender. It's the full gamut, all people. And so it would make sense that if you want to have a service or a product that is consumer driven, that you look at all consumers. It is also important that when you're designing and architecting the product, you have people of all walks of life, because as I will look at as a woman, for example, I talk about being at Zoox and saying, hey, pick up and drop off, we need to think about high heels, right? Because if you're in a city and people are going out to dinner, there will be people with high heels and they can't walk that far. That's not comfortable. So we think it's important. It's not just right, it's also important from a business standpoint. Look, what we need to do to change it is, first of all, it needs to be everybody's problem and everybody's opportunity. And we need to have some hard conversations about how we got here. The scarcity starts very early. You go to a Lego robotics meet and you already see the diversity problem. And so we need to basically have some tough conversations and focus on inclusivity first and then go to the diversity, because that's what will foster it.